In every single genre, there are people who stand head or shoulders above everyone else, either by how good they are at what they do, or by the fact that they have changed the face of the game forever in such a way that no one can imagine the genre without their actions. These people can be referred to as fathers, mothers, godmothers, and godfathers of these specific genres. Examples of such figures are Tolkien in the fantasy genre, Stan Lee in superhero comics, Walt Disney for Western animation, and as we're about to see here today, Osamu Tezuka, the godfather of manga and anime. With about 700 manga titles and 60 animes to his name, making him Japan's most prolific creator. Now, before we go any further, please remember to leave a good old like if you enjoyed the video, and as well as to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more fun videos like this, and I would very much appreciate it. It helps grow the channel. Also, do you know that I am a web fiction author, a web novel author? Well, if you've been watching my previous videos, you do, but if you haven't, well then the more you know. Well, my story, Phantom Drieg, is an action high fantasy story that you will like if you enjoy fantasy, sci-fi elements, and action scenes straight out of a light novel or a battle action shonen story. If you're into that, you will like it. So if you're interested, please go down to the description below and you'll find the links to my book on the 3 web novel sites Wattpad, Road, and Scribble Hub. I am very interested to hear your feedback on my book. Born in the year 1928 on the 3rd of November in Toyonaka City, Osaka, in the then Empire of Japan, as the oldest among his 3 children, the young Tezuka came from a generally well-to-do family, with his father, Yukata Tezuka, working as an engineer. His grandfather, Taro, was a lawyer. His great-grandfather, Ryon, and great-great-grandfather, Ryo-sen, were doctors. His mother's family had a long military history, and also Tezuka was a descendant of Hitaro Hanzo, a famous ninja and samurai who faithfully served Tokugawa Ieyasu during the Sengoku period in Japan. So again, the more you know. Now, at the age of 5, Tezuka's family moved to the village of Kohama in Hyogo Prefecture, which is the present day city of Takarazuka. When he was 7 years old, he entered Osaka Municipal Ikeda Elementary School. Due to his diminutive stature, he was rather unfortunately bullied a lot in school. His parents both had a hand in building his creative attitude. His mother was a good storyteller and would tell stories to the young Tezuka. His father was a big comic and animated movie fan who had drawn manga prior to marriage and kept a large library of manga, and brought a movie projector that would introduce Osamu to 2 major artistic influences, the animators Walt Disney and Max Fleischer. These 2 creators reportedly, and their works, which included Boop, Coco the Clown, Popeye, and Superman cartoons, had a massive influence on the young Tezuka, who is said to have loved them so much that he watched the movie Bambi 80 times, and was also such a big Superman fan that he was an honorary chairman of Japan's Superman fan club. But these would not be the only major influences in the young man's life, for as Tezuka grew up in Takarazuka City, his mother often took him to the Takarazuka Theater. The Takarazuka Revue that performs at the theater is made up entirely of women. The theater had a large impact on the later works of Tezuka, including his costuming designs as well as the performers' large eyes. Their large sparkling eyes, which alongside Western cartoons of the time like Betty Boop and Mickey Mouse, led to him creating the iconic large-eyed styled large eyes style of Japanese animation and manga. His parents further helped him when he started to draw his first manga around his second year of elementary school. Even though his parents were strict disciplinarians, they were supportive of Tezuka's artistic interests. As a result, they kept him supplied with sketchbooks and art materials. A naturally curious boy with an insatiable appetite for knowledge, young Tezuka was interested in everything from class theatrical plays to astronomy to searching for insects in the woods near the schools. Insects held a particular fascination for Tezuka, and he began not only hunting them, but also creating detailed drawings of their appearances and cataloging his finds. It was this love for insects that led to him appending the Japanese character for insects, mushi, to his name, thus creating his pen name, Osamu Tezuka. Unfortunately for Tezuka, he was living in turbulent times as the Japanese war effort got even more desperate in the Second World War. The 16-year-old Tezuka, despite still being in high school, was drafted into full-time service at the military factory. While working there, he used every possible spare moment to draw, something that often drew the ire of his supervisors. His fellow workers, however, appreciated his efforts. One of his favorite places to hide and draw was the washroom, where his mangas drawn on toilet paper would be enjoyed in private. In truth, the warriors had a profound effect on Tezuka. Having witnessed firsthand the horrors of the firebombing of Osaka, he never forgot mankind's capacity for destruction and violence, nor the toll of human suffering it demands. Yet despite the war, Osamu Tezuka graduated high school in March 1945 and was accepted into the Faculty of Medicine at Osaka University in January 1945, a profession that he pursued after nearly losing both arms in an infection as a teenager. Tezuka decided he wanted to study medicine in order to help others as his doctor had helped him. This does not mean that Tezuka had abandoned his pursuit for manga though. In fact, far from it. All throughout med school, he kept up his hobby of manga. Shortly after entering, he sold his first comic to an Osaka children's newspaper. This comic was a 4-panel series called Diary of Machan. This was Tezuka's first step into the limelight. Having generated some interest, he soon sold another one of his works, The New Treasure Island, in 1947. It was the first in a long line of Western adaptations of his. Since most of his early influences were Western, he really enjoyed taking these tales and putting his own unique spin on them. The success of The New Treasure Island brought him national fame and served as a tipping point for his career. He asked his mother whether he should pursue manga full-time or just play safe and be a doctor. At that time, being a mangaka, a manga author if you don't know, was nothing like it is today. It wasn't a rewarding profession at all. His mother told him, "You should work doing the thing you like the most of all." Tezuka took these words to heart and decided to devote himself to manga. However, he still graduated from med school, and he would later use his scientific and medical knowledge to lend some impressive credibility to his works. Flashed with his early success in the summer of 1947, Tezuka set off for Tokyo to try his luck with major manga publishers. Given the general uncertainty in the years immediately following the war, his visit to Kodansha was unsuccessful. However, the trip did pay off as publisher Shinseikaku did decide to take a chance on The Strange Voyage of Dr. Tiger, which came out in 1947, and the small publishing house Domei Shupansha bought the mysterious Dr. Koronko in the same year, 1947. Tezuka, still in medical school at the time, would follow this up by publishing his first masterpieces, a trilogy of science fiction epics called The Lost World, which came out in 1948, Metropolis, which came out in 1949, and Next World, which came out in 1951. These works featured early steampunk elements, of course, based largely on the success of his first serialized adventure manga, Jungle Emperor, which came out in 1950, which you might know better as Kimba the White Lion, was published in Manga Shonen. Eventually, Tokyo came calling for Tezuka. Looking for new talent, Shonen sent a staffer all the way to Osaka in an attempt to get Tezuka working for them. And so, in April 1951, 1 month after graduating from medical school, Shonen started serializing Ambassador Adam in 1951, aka Astro Boy, or Mighty Adam, depending on what you want to call it. The same year, Tezuka joined a group known as the Tokyo Children Manga Association, consisting of other manga artists such as Baba Noboru, Otajiro, Furusawa Hideo, Eiichi Fukui, Irei Shigeru, and Negishi Komichi. I apologize to anyone who's reading this who knows an ounce of Japanese. I'm sorry for butchering these names. Now, although Ambassador Adam had considerable moderate success, it did not do as well as Tezuka had expected. However, the young fans had been particularly taken by a relatively minor character in the series called Astro Boy. As such, the editor of Shonen suggested that Tezuka make the little robot the main character of the follow-up serial, but to make him warmer and more human-like. And so Astro Boy, which was serialized from 1952 to 1968 as one of Tezuka's longest-running serials, featuring one of his most well-known and loved creations, began publication in April 1952. Due to the success of Tetsuwana Adam in 1953, or Astro Boy, Tezuka published another influential work, the shoujo manga Ribbon no Kishi. Princess Knight was serialized in Shoujo Club from 1953 to 1956. In 1954, Tezuka first published what he would consider his life's work, Phoenix, which originally appeared in Mushi Production commercial firm. Tezuka quickly found himself the object of a large and very creative fandom. A number of his fans began to bombard him with letters, often enclosing their own manga works in search for advice or criticisms. On occasion, a few of them would even turn up at his doorstep, samples in hand. Despite his busy schedule, Tezuka would take the time to engage them, often with discussions lasting late into the night. Although he spent almost every working hour drawing manga, Tezuka often overextended himself professionally. As a consequence, editors from various publications serializing his mangas would track him down and wait by his side as he finished page after page of artwork. It was such a common occurrence that his editors resorted to playing a game of rock, paper, scissors to decide whose pages he would work on first. This in turn led to Tezuka finding multiple hidden safe houses, often out of the way local hotels where he could work on his manga in peace. At the time, the workload became so overwhelming, Tezuka would call upon other local manga artists to help him. This would usually mean a few manic days of work, with Tezuka providing the overall direction as well as the finishing details, and the junior manga artist drawing the basic character pauses and backgrounds. Although the other artists learned a lot from working with Tezuka, it was not a sustainable situation. As such, in 1957, he rented a house and converted it into a proper studio. He was also formerly hiring art assistants and an agent to act as his go-between with his many manga editors. As he worked regularly with an assistant, Tezuka developed a type of graphic shorthand that let him communicate his wishes to them more easily. By simply annotating his pages with a type of code, he could let his assistants know which backgrounds to fill and which color to use. This system was so efficient it would even allow him to often, working from memory alone, to send instructions to his assistants over the phone. A huge fan of the cinema, Tezuka also approached his movie going with the same level of efficiency. Despite his inhuman schedule, he was an avid reader of the film industry magazines. Using the articles and reviews, he'd separate the movies he wanted to see for the story from the ones he was interested only for the cinematography. He'd then calculate the run times and plot the schedule that would allow him to move from theater to theater to only see the scenes that interested him. Using this system, he was able to see upwards of 350 films per year. That's a lot. I mean, I have all the time in the world, and I don't think I see that many movies in a year. In the cinema, of course. In 1958, Tezuka had two meetings that would shape his life. The first was a visit by the staff from Toei Animation who were interested in developing Tezuka's manga series Son Goku the Monkey, which had run from 1952 to 1959 as an animated feature film, known as Sayuki. The film was released in August 1960, and although he was only a consultant on the project, it was the first of Tezuka's works to be animated. More importantly, though, his involvement gave him behind-the-scenes access to the inner workings of the animation studio, something that would pay off later in his career. The second was an arranged meeting with Etsuko Okada, a young woman from Tezuka's hometown of Takarazuka. The two began dating, and a little over a year later they were married in a ceremony held in October 1959 at the Takarazuka Hotel. True to form, Tezuka arrived late to his own wedding dinner because he had finished up a few urgent pages of artwork for a waiting editor. Besides being a homemaker, Etsuko was also an invaluable sounding board of Tezuka professionally. Since he was otherwise surrounded either by assistants worried about their work going to waste or editors worrying about missing a deadline if anything had to be redrawn, Tezuka was able to rely on Etsuko's opinion if he felt unsure about the quality of his work. Feeling that both his home and work life were now stable, Tezuka began to turn his attention to his dream of opening an animation studio. The first step in August 1960 was the construction of a combination of home and studio in Fujimidai, on the outskirts of Tokyo. On the hand, this allowed Tezuka's aging father and mother to leave Takarazuka and move to the young couple's home. On the other, it established a more permanent base of operations for his works, something he would need in order to establish an animation studio. In 1961, he started his own animation production company called Tezuka Osamu production animation department, which changed to Mushi Pro the following year. He then started working on a pilot for an animated version of Astro Boy on January the 1st, and then on January the 1st, 1963, Astro Boy started syndication as a series on Fuji Television, and the following year it was broadcasted to NBC as Astro Boy in the United States. He followed this up with an animated version of his comic Big X and W3. And in 1965, he created his first color anime, Django Taite, which would be later aired in the Americas as Kimba the White Lion. His works from the late 60s, such as Magataishi, and the 70s, such as Mitsumi Gatoru and Blackjack, are not that well known outside of Japan, but continued to draw at a prolific pace during this period. In 1972, due to internal strife, Mushi Pro disintegrated, and Tezuka also lost clear legal control over the animated versions of his works, including Astro Boy. Tezuka would later create another production company which he named after himself, which he called Tezuka Pro. Now let's move back a little bit, because in 1964, Tezuka would have the opportunity to meet one of his childhood idols. While traveling to the 1964 New York's World's Fair as a special correspondent to the Sankei Shimbun, Tezuka had an opportunity for a very quick meeting with Walt Disney himself. Although it only lasted for scarcely a minute, it was something he cherished for the rest of his life. Disney told Tezuka that he knew about Astro Boy and that he hoped he could do something similar with it in future. Probably buy it. I mean, we're talking about Disney here. A statement that had Tezuka brimming with pride and joy. What's more, Walt Disney was not the only one to be impressed by Tezuka's achievements. In early 1965, he received a letter from famed film director Stanley Kubrick inviting him to join his production crew as a visual set designer for Kubrick's new movie, his upcoming movie, 2001. Although Tezuka was flattered and incredibly interested, it would mean taking a year off work and moving to London for the duration, so this was something he felt he could not do, so he turned Kubrick down. In 1967, in response to the magazine Garo and the Gekiga movement, Tezuka created the magazine Come. By doing so, he radically changed his art from the cartoony Disney-esque slapstick style towards a more realistic drawing style. At the time, the themes of his books became more focused on adult audiences. A common element in these books and short stories is the very dark and immoral nature of their main characters. The story was also filled with explicit violence, erotic scenes, and crimes. The change of his manga from aimed at children to more Gekage manga style started with the Yokai manga Dororo in 1967. This manga was influenced by the success of and a response to Shigeru Mizuki's Gegege no Kitaro. Simultaneously, he also produced Vampire that, like Dororo, also introduced a stronger, more coherent storyline and a shift in the drawing style. After these two, he began his true first Gekage attempt with Swallowing the Earth. Dissatisfied with the result, he soon after produced his work Phoenix, which began in 1967. Besides the well-known series Phoenix, Blackjack, and Buddha, which were drawn in this style, he also introduced a vast amount of one-shots or shorter series such as Ayoko, Odetu, Kirihito, Alabaster, Apollo Song, Barbara M.W., The Book of Human Insects, and a large number of short stories that were later collectively published in books such as Under the Air, Clockwork Apple, The Crater, The Melody of Iron, and other short stories, and Record of the Glass Castle. It was during this period, with the fall of Mushi Productions, which he was well tied to publicly, that Akita Shoten, the publisher of the popular weekly Shonen Champion, decided to commission Tezuka for 5 weeks to write anything he wanted. According to noted Tezuka scholar Natsu Onada Power in her book God of Comics, Osamu Tezuka and the Creation of the Post-World War II Manga, the editor, who felt sorry for Tezuka for his declining popularity, offered the commission as Tezuka's last work before retirement. Originally conceived as a special commemorative project celebrating Tezuka's then 30-year career as a manga artist, it was developed under the banner of Osamu Tezuka's one-man theater production, with the idea being to publish 5 independent stories that would spotlight Tezuka's star system and feature many of his characters. However, what Tezuka came up with was Blackjack, which came out in 1973. Far from a planned farewell tour, Blackjack was an instant success, appealing both to his die-hard fans as well as the more general audience, and it catapulted Tezuka to one of the highest levels of popularity in his career. The short 5-week commission ended up being a 5-year-long program from 1973 to 1978 and produced 230 chapters, with another 13 chapters produced intermediately until 1983. Rejuvenated and refocused, Tezuka began to regularly churn out nearly 400 pages a month. Having recovered from his darkest days, the mid-1970s was a prolific time for Tezuka, producing manga series for a variety of age groups. In July 1974, he started working on The Three-Eyed One, a new boys' adventure series focused on the discovery of ancient ruins and the lost civilization. And in 1976, he began publishing a new series for girls called Unico. Tezuka kept working until his death on February 9, 1989, from stomach cancer in Tokyo. "I am begging you, let me work," seemed to have been his last words, showing that he was a workaholic to the end. But his legacy still very much lives on today, with remakes of his works, a museum, and his constant influence on the industry. He changed manga forever by creating things that are still staples today, like introducing big-eyed anime characters, incorporating cinematic action into manga, which prior to Tezuka's time were more static art forms. Tezuka gave more life to the images. He popularized manga in the post-World War II Japan. He worked with the manga industry, helping to grow it. He helped influence generations of mangaka and animators with examples like Hayao Miyazaki and Akira Toriyama. He helped make becoming a mangaka or animator a goal as lofty as being a physician, and perhaps more lofty as goals, thanks to Tezuka's highly respected and financially rewarding career. Few people can boast Osamu Tezuka's accomplishments, and even now, 32 years after his death, Tezuka's legacy is just as strong as ever, proving that he is worthy of the title, the Godfather of Manga and Anime. This has been Red Chaos 1. Remember, if you like the video, you can leave a like, you can subscribe, it helps grow the channel if you want to see more videos like it. And you can even leave a comment, or you can check my book, in the description down below. Like I said, this has been Red Chaos One signing off.